I am for everybody. I am for nobody.
No, you not talk about me.
No. In another way.
How are you sure, sir?
Keep quiet.
The only area where Buhari defeat for that statement, now only appointment. When you are talking about project, the project is well approach. If you need to spell out. What does this talk about? But if you say appointment, and in the type of appointment, you appoint people in front. But if you like say the man, I'm a brother. Whether our leaders are the I'm telling you, the way to get the position first. Why una no come win APC? Why una no win get
Well, thank you for staying with us here on Global Morning. I'm Uyag Bofwegbe. On Global Television, we're in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Wonderful Thursday. It is 22nd day in the month of June 2023. The president has been away in France for the second day running, and we're hoping that all of the issues that will be discussed at that financial summit will mean a whole lot for Nigeria, especially in the area of foreign investment and all kinds of strategic partnership that will help give our country a very remarkable advantage and put this great country on the winning path. We understand that the president has started striking, if you like, connection with a whole lot of pivotal institutions with global relevance, and of course the International Financial Corporation, the IFC, as well. So we are looking out for the best of outcomes on account of this trip just before the president returns to the country on Saturday. But the papers this morning give us an insight into several happenings in Nigeria and indeed across the world. So we're going to just begin with the Daily Sun for you this morning. The big story here says appointment seekers intensify lobby, follow Tinubu abroad. Seek place in cabinet, parastatal boards. We understand over 2,000 of those boards have now been dissolved. All right, it's only now there will be replacements for those who have been taken out of those boards. And now we're hearing that a whole lot of people, particularly those within the APC fold, are now lobbying the president to find the spots, all right, in those areas. And then we understand ministerial list is also not out yet. So there are those who are very interested and hoping, quite frankly, that their names will pop in that list. For Nigerians, generally, they're just waiting patiently to see who and who will make it to that list, because ultimately it is competence and track record that should count, not where you're from, how you worship, who you worship, and so on and so forth. And we are believing the president will use his influence and executive latitude to pick the right hands for the job, because the country is at this point in a place where the least we can do is to get the right people, as they say, the right, square pegs in square holes and round pegs in round holes and so on and so forth. Okay, but then we're not done with Daily Sun, because here, just beside the nameplates on the right, top right end of the front cover of Daily Sun, it says IPOB, Kanus cancel, Ozekome Ejiofor, not sacks. That story actually had popped a few days ago. Change of service chiefs, Afenifere expresses optimism of better security. That's on page 26 of the Daily Sun. Egbetokun assumes office as IGP, calls for synergy, cost of international flights to increase by 20% over Naira depreciation. That's according to AITA. That story is on page 2 of the Daily Sun. Strengthening families, participants Lord Latter-day Saints for organizing conference. Fuel subsidy removal, good for investments. British envoy. Remember, he had met with the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, yesterday. Speaking of the British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Geoffrey Montgomery, and he talked about how that fuel subsidy is a big economic decision by this government for this country, and then also expressed optimism that the British authorities, the United Kingdom and Nigeria will partner on many fronts. He used that opportunity to mention that the policy around people coming for studies, not being allowed to bring their dependents or their families with them, starting from January of 2024, is not aimed at Nigeria because, according to him, 10% of people who come to study in the UK are actually Nigerians. So we move on to the Daily Times now. Quickly, let's see what we have on the Daily Times for you this morning. A big one here says, anger over Tinubu Shettima office holders' hefty salary increase. Sharp disagreement, discordant tunes rock RMAFC over pronouncements. All right. What's more, FCTA building plan approvals now within 90 days. Suspected herdsmen in Plateau kill 15, burn church palace. Crisis in Undumes Mosque not over. All right. Those are stories basically from the Daily Times. Then at the foot of it, Boa Foods to maintain rice prices across Nigeria. Okay, so we'll turn you now to Daily Independent. On Daily Independent, very visible here, the big story, how we will decide presidential election petitions by tribunal. APM closes case after calling one witness. Annex states why couldn't provide documents for Obi LP. Tinubu's economic decisions attracting global attention. That's British envoy, Mr. Geoffrey Montgomery there talking. President in Paris to facilitate FDI into Nigeria presidency. I'm worried about lawyers' conduct. Lagos CJ Lamet. Protest disrupts work at ECOWAS permanent secretariat site. NLC accuses Chinese firm of anti-labor practices. That's on page 7 of the Daily Independent. I'm leaving Nigeria police force better than I met it. Ex-IGP with details of the story on page 6 of the Daily Independent. Court restores Gusau as Zamfara deputy governor after end of tenure. That's on page 6 of today's Daily Independent. 15 persons killed in fresh herders attacks in Plateau communities. And that sad story is on page 8 of the Daily Independent. FG moves to tackle rejection of Nigeria's products offshore. Protest rocks Ondo Varsity over sack of 30 lecturers. And the Nation here presents us with a bunch of headlines this morning. Student loan plan sparks controversy in universities. ASU Konwa, parents take different positions. Policy due to begin September. NBS Discos raked in 247 billion naira in Q1. That refers to the first 3 months of the year, covering January, February, and March. It says, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, the distribution companies raked in 247 billion naira. A lot of money, actually. All right, so if you extrapolate that for a 1 year period, you obviously are looking at something in the neighborhood of 1 trillion naira. Okay, Makinde tips 6 ex-commissioners to return. House guest lists of nominees. Okay, Ogbe to government, state police will end insecurity. Acting IG talks tough. Of course, just yesterday, after being decorated by the vice president and then taking office, Mr. Egbetokun, that is Olukayode Egbetokun, the acting IGP, had said that he is going to chase criminals like a lion. Whatever that metaphor stands for, we want to take it that what he means is he will deploy every resource available, at the disposal of the Nigeria police to fight criminal and criminality. All right, what I told President by Bill Gates, Eco Rice enters market, sells for 33,000 naira. That's on page 41 of the Nation newspaper today. I'm sure you want to read it up, all right? 20 feared killed in Plateau attacks. Imo to revisit Okorocha probe. That's on page 2 of today's Nation newspaper. Let's look at Daily Trust for you. All right, just beneath the nameplate of the Daily Trust's new exchange rate jacks up international airfares. Bawa remains in DSS custody 1 week after. 114% salary hike for president, VP, governors, others, a proposal. RMAFC, they are the ones making that proposal. But then it has gotten Nigerians, for the most part, feeling very hysterical and angered about such, for such to even be proposed. These are very delicate times for the country and for our citizens, and I'm sure public authorities also have to, if you like, exercise a level of emotional intelligence with these things. Even though we understand that some of these rules, maybe this one is not included, are statutory, all right? But exercise of due diligence, of some element of public relations, and then, like I mentioned already, emotional intelligence, all right, is very, very important. In fact, it's very, very critical. Okay, but the big story on the front page of the Daily Trust reads 201 killed in Plateau in 5 months, 20 vigilantes, villagers killed in fresh attacks, external forces behind killings, governor, NGO blames herdsmen killers rivalry, military meets stakeholders, all right, and then you have a breakdown of killings in Plateau, number of cases in local governments, and all of those details you would like to look at. But then it doesn't take away one bit from the fact that this is an extremely sad story. FG pledges small dollar supply to stabilize Naira is a story on page 23 of today's Daily Trust newspaper. I'm sure you'd like to look it up and see the details for yourself there this morning. But that's not all, because when you look at the Daily Trust, you see more stories at the foot of the front cover. One here says, Kano governor reinstates anti-graft balls suspended by Ganduje. Nigeria's economic decisions being, noticed globally. UK envoy said that to the Vice President Kashim Shettima yesterday. 436 students jostle for 30 overseas PTDF scholarship in Northeast. Okay. All right, let's take it a different paper now. The Guardian newspaper, this time. Proposed 114% pay rise for public officers complicates minimum wage negotiation. That's a story on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. All right, but let's take a look at that now. PPC APM closes petition challenging Tinubu's victory. Courts adjourns to July 14. Tinubu pushes for FDI as world leaders seek inclusive financial system at Paris summit. Freed inmates narrate 14-year prison experience for not cooperating with policemen. That's Metro page 8 on today's Guardian newspaper. Nigeria needs state police to tackle insecurity, says ex-agric minister Ogbe. Why UK government banned dependent visa for Nigerian students by High Commissioner. Okay, we're just going to take a break here because we have a couple of more papers to look at this morning for you on the show, including Tribune, Vanguard, Punch, Sports Extra, and Business Day. And that will be after this break. Then when we return, I'll be joined by a gentleman who will help us find context and perspectives as regards policies already taken by these governments in the 4th week of coming into power. Do stay with us, everyone.
Now, see, let me tell you.
I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
No, you not talk about me.
This one too now in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
I am in this one in another way. I am
The
for
only area where Buhari defeats for that statement is only appointment. When you're talking about project, a project is spelled as God. If you say you need to spell as God, what does it mean? But if you say appointment, and in the type of appointment, you appoint people you trust. But if you like the man, I'm an APC brother, when our leaders are the I'm an APC, when they get the position, then. Why you not come win APC? Why you not win APC? Now, see, let me tell you.
I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
No, you no talk
I
am,
am
you
doing this one
know.
too now in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
I am in this
The
one
only
in
that
another way.
statement,
I am
the
for
only area,
everybody,
the only
I am
area
for
where,
nobody.
the only area where Buhari defeat for that statement, na only appointment. When you're talking about project, a project spell as God. If you say you need to spell as God, what does it mean? But if you say appointment, and in a type of appointment, you appoint people you trust. But if you like say the man na I'm ready to say that when our leaders are the number you know, I'm telling where they get the position then. Why una no come win APC? Why una no win get na enemy? Why
no go win Lagos?
Why not be their population myself?
Why una no win Lagos?
Now, see, let me tell you.
I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
No, you no talk
I am
am, you
doing this one
know.
too now in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
I am in this
The
one
only
in
that
another way.
statement,
I am
the
for
only area,
everybody,
the
I
only
am
area
for
where,
nobody.
the only area where Buhari defeat for that statement, na only appointment. When you're talking about project, a project spell as God. If you say you need to spell as God, what does it mean? But if you say appointment, and in a type of appointment, you appoint people you trust. But if you like say the man na I'm ready to say that when our leaders are the number you know, I'm telling where they get the position then. Why una no come win APC? Why una no win get na enemy?
Why no go win Lagos? Why una
be their population myself?
Why una no win Lagos?
Now, see, let me tell you.
I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
No, you no talk
I am
am, you
doing this one
know.
too now in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
I am in this
The
one
only
in
that
another way.
statement,
I am
the
for
only area,
everybody,
the only
I am
area
for
where,
nobody.
the only area where Buhari defeat for that statement, na only appointment. When you're talking about project, a project spell as God. If you say you need to spell as God, what does it mean? But if you say appointment, and in a type of appointment, you appoint people you trust. But if you like say the man na I'm ready to say that when our leaders are the number you know, I'm telling where they get the position then. Why una no come win APC? Why una no win get na enemy?
Why no go win Lagos?
Why not be their population myself?
Why una no win Lagos?
Now, see, let me tell you.
I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
No, you no talk
I am
am, you
doing this one
know.
too now in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
I am in this
The
one
only
in
that
another way.
statement,
I am
the
for
only area,
everybody,
the
I
only
am
area
for
where,
nobody.
the only area where Buhari defeat for that statement, na only appointment. When you're talking about project, a project spell as God. If you say you need to spell as God, what does it mean? But if you say appointment, and in a type of appointment, you appoint people you trust. But if you like say the man na I'm ready to say that when our leaders are the number you know, I'm telling where they get the position then. Why una no come win APC? Why una no win get na enemy?
Why no go win Lagos? Why una
be their population myself?
Why una no win Lagos?
Now, see, let me tell you.
I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
No, you no talk
I am
am, you
doing this one
know.
too now in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
I am in this
The
one
only
in
that
another way.
statement,
I am
the only
for
area,
everybody,
the only
I am
area
for
where,
nobody.
the only area where Buhari defeat for that statement, na only appointment. When you're talking about project, a project spell as God. If you say you need to spell as God, what does it mean? But if you say appointment, and in a type of appointment, you appoint people you trust. But if you like say the man na I'm ready to say that when our leaders are the number you know, I'm telling where they get the position then. Why una no come win APC? Why una no win get na Your enemy full.
I don't go with Lagos. Why not this Lagos? Why not this Lagos?
Now, see, let me tell you.
I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
No, you not talk
I
to me.
this one
No.
too now in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
I am in this
The
one
only,
too in
that
another way.
statement,
I am
the
for
only area,
everybody,
the
I
only
am
area
for nobody.
the only area where Buhari defeat for that statement, na only appointment. When you are talking about project, the project spell as God. If you say you need to spell as God, what does it mean? But if you say appointment, and in the type of appointment, you appoint people you trust. But if you
Like say the man na APC.
I'm ready to go down when our leaders are the number you know, I'm a lady when they get the position then.
Why una no come win APC? Why una no win APC?
Get in our enemy. Your enemy full.
I don't go with Lagos. Why
I'm
not
not
this
the
Lagos?
population myself.
Why not this Lagos?
Now, see, let me tell you.
Thank you everyone for staying with us here on the program. Just a while ago, we're looking at the papers for you, but we're going to take that up in a bit. Just to let you know that we have a big conversation in front of us right after the newspaper review. And we just want to return now to look at the Punch newspaper. Let's take the Punch newspaper here and see what the big headline is right in front of it. It says 2,000 vacancies open for APC faithful Tinubu's allies. It's talking about the boss dissolution that the president had announced a few days ago. 153 agencies, parastatals, others await board members' appointments. Don't sacrifice competence for political patronage, OPS tells the president. That's the organized private sector. You take a look just above the nameplates of today's Punch newspaper, top right end of it, with a picture of the suspended chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, talking about Mr. Abdul Rashid Bawa. DSS combs Bawa's Abuja home, extends probe to associates. That story will, the details are on page 8 of today's Punch newspaper. Egbetokun plans tech-driven policing, improved welfare. That's been a long time coming. In 2023, we shouldn't be talking about court and nail policing. Should be intel-driven, and then that can also be powered using the blessing of technology, right? Then there's also a picture, top left end of the front page. You have a picture of the former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Dr. Alison Madueke there. Hearing continues in Desiani's case on forfeited assets, all right? That's been a case that has spanned several years, yet we still aren't done. You look at the bottom of the newspaper, the Punch, that is, it says Lagos rice value chain created 2,620 jobs. Sanwo-Olu, Makinde elevates Ladoja, 10 other Ibadan high chiefs to Oba. Residents panic as bandits' reign of terror returns to Ondo LG. Labour fumes as RMFAC hikes politicians' salaries, but then the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission wants us to believe, at least they are saying to us, that it's only a proposal. We have not started implementing. We have not even put the modalities and framework in place. But again, like I mentioned earlier, these are sensitive times, and this issue in particular is even so sensitive that the Commission would need to tread very carefully, all right, on that one. But I'm very interested in this story here on page 7 of today's Punch newspaper. Residents panic as bandits' reign of terror resumes or returns to Ondo local government. Remember that we had an attack on a church in Ondo. That was in a war not very long ago, and the people of that community are still reeling from the very devastating impact of that terror. And now we hear that there's a return, all right, of terror there. But Ondo is not alone in this very bad place, so sadly. I mean, look at most part of the country. You go to the north, you go to the southeast, you go to the southwest, it's virtually the same story. The middle belt perhaps has had a little more than its fair share of attacks as well. So it's a good thing that we have somebody with us on the show this morning who has a very robust background in many of these issues. I'll be telling you about him in a bit. But I want us to look at business for a minute. So let's see Business Day, a newspaper. That's our last port of call with the papers this morning. It says politicians' habits unchanged as Nigerians bear reform or perform reform pain. Politicians' habits unchanged as Nigerians bear reform pain. Some economists have said a few years ago that when a country or a state, even say a subnational, is undergoing economic constraints, it should reflect in the way the executives themselves, whether the president or the governor, those appointed and those elected, carry themselves. All right. It should also reflect in the way we spend, the way we prioritize, the things we put first, and so on and so forth. All right. But then you look at the bottom of Business Day, says women leadership key to closing gender gaps in finance. Women's World Banking report calls for action. Okay, we do hope you take out time to look at these papers this morning, because that's one way you can stay ahead of the news and then stay ahead of your game ultimately. I'd like you to meet my guest now, a gentleman by the name of Isaac Abrak. Is the chairman of Northern Christian Youth Professionals. He has been a hostile environment journalist, public affairs commentator as well. We also need to state that he has been an award winner, having clinched the Reuters Mohammed Amis Award for Best Hostile Environment Journalist. That was some 10 years ago. I mean, that was a sterling award on the continent of Africa, courtesy of Reuters. I mean, his credentials just stretches like a winding cord. But then we'd like to say thank you so much, Isaac, for making our time to join us on the program this morning. We feel very privileged to have you on the show. I mean, I've spoken with you just at about lunchtime yesterday, and you expressed so much of passion with regards to insecurity in this country and what can be done to actually deal with it. Now, we have a new IG in place. Service chiefs have been changed. Tomorrow there will be a formal handing over from one service chief to the other. We have seen change of service chiefs, but we haven't seen much of change in the fight against terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, and all kinds of criminality in this country. What have been your thoughts, given where you are coming from?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to say thank you, and Global TV for having me. I'd just like to share with the viewers, I'm a journalist, so the studio is beautiful.
Thank you.
I like it. Security situation, change of service chiefs. One thing that struck me about this change of service chiefs is that it is uniting Nigeria. All the service chiefs, are all collected or selected, from all across regions, across tribes, across ethnicity, to have them serve as one unit, for defense, for provision of security in Nigeria. So with that, it is very easy, for a person like me, a journalist, to say that already we have dealt with one of the most difficult situations that we have faced in Nigeria that has hindered us to enjoy security in Nigeria. And what is that? The society, the people of Nigerians have not really, especially in the last regime, did not really feel that they were part of the government. If you recall, a lot of people had complained then that the security chiefs of the last administration were appointed from a particular region.
Was that true?
Yeah.
I mean, by your own assessment, was that true?
Yeah, but yes, most of them dominated that religion, and tribe. So because of that, people do not really feel that they belong to the government, and as such, people don't really cooperate to provide security. I give you instances. We're here now. If I'm your friend, right, and something happens to me, you will be concerned to know what happened to you. And sometimes I'll call you and say, I see people passing around my house. I don't know these people. Can you help me? So sometimes we've had situations when security people go to a community to provide security, and the people of that community do not cooperate. So this has made it very difficult, for the Nigerian security system, whether it is the police, whether it is the military, whether it is Boko Haram, whether it is Fulani bandits, whether it is communal clashes, for people to provide intelligence, to cooperate with the security people so as to provide security for everybody. Then another thing again, in my years of covering Boko Haram insurgency, especially within the times of 2012, 2013, 2014, you could hear grumblings, even, from the foot soldiers, right? Whatever happens in Nigeria, right? Whatever goes on in Nigeria, whatever goes on in the top leadership of Nigeria is reflected even to how the foot soldiers react. You would have soldiers who feel like the setup of Nigeria, the presidency, the leadership of Nigeria is not balanced. And as such, if you have a foot soldier, right, that he comes from a region that feels like they have been relegated to the background, they have been marginalized, those soldiers are always grumbling about it. And when they grumble, I assure you, when they go also to the field to execute their work, it impacts, it affects on how they deploy, their best to bring about to protect the society. So I'm saying here that with the appointment of all these security chiefs, from all over Nigeria, across religion, across ethnicity, Nigerians now have a sense of belonging in this government. And as such, you're going to see cooperation from communities, to support the security people to do their job. You will also see that even the soldiers, even the policemen, even the civil defense, even the customs, the immigration officers themselves, they will put in their best, because why? They are Nigerians, they have a belonging, they believe that they've been carried along, and as such their best would be deployed in providing security.
Just as you were establishing your narrative, you made mention of the so-called Fulani bandits or Fulani headsmen, as they are always referred to, even though we understand that you don't tie criminality to a tribe, because every tribe has got its bad people and its good people. That said, I was born and raised in the South, right? So I grew up as a young boy seeing Fulani herdsmen go about their business, mind their business, all right, didn't hurt the communities, all right, we didn't hear trouble coming from them. At what point do we start experiencing this curve of now hearing Fulani herdsmen, Fulani herdsmen, Fulani herdsmen? Herdsmen now becoming threats as against just minding their business of cattle rearing.
Just thinking from the top of my head now, two things are involved there. We have the issue about climate change. We have also political issues, especially one period that you can point to is the 2011 post-election crisis.
Right.
So let's take the climate change. Over the years, right, our climate has continuously deteriorated. The Fulani herders, right, our brothers, the Fulani herders, who live in Burkina Faso, Chad, Niger, Cameroon, and all of these brothers' countries, right, have always wandered around the region. You saw them. We call them Bokolo. They wandered all around, the region, the West African region, looking for grazing land, So, as the climate change got bad and worse, the rain started getting drier and drier in their countries.
Deforestation, desertification.
Desertification. So deserts encroach into their family land, right? So because of that, they had to spend more time in Nigeria, right? Especially in the Middle Belt, right? In the Middle Belt is where all around the raining season up to the dry season, in the Middle Belt, there is always water in the soil, right? So therefore, you will find that almost all around the year, it is a green land, right? If you go to Kogi State, if you go to some parts of Plateau State, and all of those places, even some parts of Kaduna State, So these people want this grazing land to feed their cattle. Then there is also the Boko Haram import. I'm going to tie them together, please. There is the Lake Chad. the Lake Chad was providing employment, I think, for at least at the time we checked 1.5 million people, around Niger, Chad, Nigeria. So with the shrinking of the Lake Chad, all those people were rendered unemployed. And that is the breeding ground, or that is the breeding force of Boko Haram. The people within that region, from our region being Borno State, were rendered unemployed. And a terrorist group has spring forth from that region. And that terrorist group was buying tricycles and giving it to people, giving traders money to go and do their trades in the market. Those people were easily recruited. Now, you have these headers moving all around this region. Remember that with Chad, Burkina Faso have experienced a lot of war over the years. Remember that Libya is there with the fall of Gaddafi, right? There were arms that were no longer controlled. That started finding their way, down to Nigeria because of what the insecurities that we had, right? And as that happened, people began to become to like what they call war merchants. You go to Burkina Faso, you fight. You go to Chad Republic, you fight.
Some sort of mercenaries?
Mercenaries. Now, if you I've also had the opportunity of covering human trafficking. I just got back from Benin, where we're shooting a documentary on human trafficking. Our brothers who leave Nigeria, right, to Libya, they will tell you about the bandits on the road. They call them Tuaregs or Arabo. Right? Those are the people that are actually involved in this trafficking. And where do they take these people to? To Libya. Right? So, it tells us that within these countries, there are people there who have ammunitions and their job is just criminality. Now, those people, by one way or the other, found themselves to Nigeria. When the 2011 post-election crisis happened, sir. I hope our viewers have followed.
The trail is making a lot of sense.
Yes. When the 2011 crisis happened, don't forget already we had Boko Haram, right? But it was not it has not blown out of proportion yet. Right. So, and it happened in a volatile state, Kaduna State, which has a lot of interreligious crisis, egged by politics, the quest for power grabbing and land grabbing. So there was a crisis, a political crisis when Goodluck Jonathan was announced
as the winner of the election in 2011.
Yes, 2011.
2011, yes.
Yeah, was it? Yeah.
That was when he won election to become elected president.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So the president then, Muhammadu Buhari, then of the NNPP, right?
No, it was, you're talking about when President Buhari ran against him.
Yes.
In 2011.
Yes, and lost.
And lost. They hadn't come up with, there was CP, it was in CPC.
Okay, it was yes. CPC.
General Muhammadu Buhari, as it was then called, was
yes.
in CPC.
Yes, was
and
in
CPC.
He
lost to Jonathan of the PDP
yes.
in 2011.
Yes, so crisis then sparked. And those crises started as a political issues. People who were reacting that Buhari's followers who were reacting that they felt that the election should have gone in favor of Buhari, went out to the street and there were clashes, and before you know anything, it transformed into a religious crisis, right? So a lot of people were killed, but the Hausas, but the natives, the people of southern Kaduna, who are predominantly Christians, from the northern part of Kaduna, they are predominantly Muslims. So it was very easy for that political thing to turn into a religious issue, right? Fulanis were also affected, right? Because most of them are Muslims. So at the end of the day, what we had was that the Fulanis, after who lost their properties, and their lives, and fled, they would go, right? And organize and come back to take revenge for their attacks in southern. Yes, to reinforce and take revenge on the southern Kaduna where they were attacked. In the process of that, they were bringing their brothers even across the borders to come and help them take revenge. Eventually, these people came and discovered that Nigeria is a gold mine. There's a lot of money in Nigeria. We don't have to work for Boko Haram. We on our own, by ourselves, we can just go and abduct people, you know, and take money for ourselves. I'm trying to make the connection. You mentioned that in the South, you used to see Fulani men move without any problem. The Fulani people that we grew up with, right, in Southern Kaduna, for instance, Zonkwa, Fadi and Bokut, where I grew up as a young boy, you know, in the farms, we used to have issues with them. Sometimes their cattle will tramp over our farms, our crops, you know, but they will call the Ardo. The Ardo is the head of the Fulanis in any community, and the head of that community, and it will be settled. But where then did it become where they started deploying ammunitions was the introduction where they go to get their brothers across the borders to come and help them fight. The hiring of the mercenaries. And these mercenaries also somehow had contacts with Boko Haram. They were already working for Boko Haram. I'm telling you this, these are findings of a journalist talking to people who had been abducted from Boko Haram, talking to security chiefs, talking to NGO workers who provide, you know,
who are on the ground.
Yes, who are on the ground. So these are things that I collected. These are my personal collections. These are my personal, experiences that I deducted while covering the Boko Haram insurgency. So some of these people had worked for Boko Haram, or they had kinsmen who worked for Boko Haram, or their friends who had worked for Boko Haram, you know. So, and if they are recruited and they come, they work here, they will now feel that, why don't I just go and kidnap somebody and come and keep him and take money? So they discovered Nigeria was a gold mine. This is where this is where the situation exploded in the north, especially in the middle belt, in Kaduna, Plateau State, and all of that. That we started having high level of abductions.
I can imagine. I want to ask you this real quick, Isaac. In 2015, May 29th, right, when former President Muhammadu Buhari was taking power, in his inaugural speech, he had emphasized that there was urgent need to fight insurgency. In particular, of course, you have other strands of criminality in the mix. But then that speech did give hope to Nigerians.
Yes, it did.
But that was 8 years ago.
Yes.
8 years down the line, former President Muhammadu Buhari is called pathetically low in the fight against criminality in this country.
Yes.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has taken over. This is his fourth week at the helms. He has made a lot of moves that even the international community says we're impressed with what we've seen so far. But as they would say, this is some sort of long walk to freedom for not just the president, not just the government, but for Nigerians. What are some more specifics the president and indeed his government must do to be able to win the war against insurgency and all forms of criminality in this country?
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has achieved one by uniting Nigerians, in his leadership. He has united Nigerians, and as such, I repeat again, you are going to see cooperation from the people of Nigeria, from peoples of communities who have propensity on whose communities are volatile in terms of insecurity. You are going to see a lot of cooperation to the security agencies, and that is a big win. Number two, my group, the Northern Christian Youth Professionals, when we declared support for Bola Ahmed Tinubu on the 1st of February 2022, we knew that Bola Ahmed Tinubu has the capacity or has a track record of using mass youth employment, to curb insecurity, like he did in Lagos State with the creation of LASMA, the Lagos State Traffic Management Agency, LAUMA, the Lagos State Waste Authority, Green Initiative. All these things were what took the Agberos off the streets, right, and turned them to state access. And that was what was responsible for the growth of the IGR. We now had youths that were sweeping the streets of Lagos. We now had Agberos who were disturbing traffic, now controlling traffic. And as such, we knew that Bola Ahmed Tinubu has this track record. What am I saying? I'm saying that when we saw in Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed hope, his manifesto, therein lies there, he said that he was going to revitalize the forest rangers. And it now hit us as a group. When they came to take the Dapchi girls, the Chibok girls, Boko Haram came to take the Chibok girls. They sneaked from the forest, took our girls and disappeared into the forest. When they came to Dapchi to take Leah Sheribu and her classmates and her schoolmates, they also came from the forest, took our girls and escaped. The people who carried out the attack in Ondo State, they sneak from the forest, take these people and go back to the forest. The separatist movement in Imo State, in disturbing the southeast, they are operating from the forest. They sneak to town, cause the mayhem, and go back there. The all militants in the Niger Delta are hiding in the creeks, the forest. It means to tell us that these violent groups, whatever names they like to call themselves, have hijacked our forests. They've hijacked our farmlands. And as such, if Bola Ahmed Tinubu says he is going to create the forest guard, because we believe that with the revitalization of the forest guard, we would have youth, for instance, who would come into the forest guard, and we are asking that these youths should be recruited, the foot soldiers should be recruited from the rural areas. For instance, in Sambisa forest, let us get the youths whose villages are close to the Sambisa's forest. That Sambisa forest, we call it forest, but it is actually their ancestral land. It is actually their farmlands. They are more familiar with those forests than all these visitors. Right? So, and as such, anytime these youths have the capacity, to monitor the forest, they have the capacity, to go after these bandits anytime they carry out an attack and locate them in the forest, apprehend them, or provide intelligence, cooperate with the military, to flush out, to smoke out these people. Because one of the things that I also picked up while covering insecurity is that the Nigerian forces, sometimes some of their issues is that they don't have a good understanding of the forest.
Of the terrain.
Right. So when they chase them to some certain level, they don't know, to some certain distance in the forest, they don't really know how to go, where to trace them, how to go about it.
Navigation is a problem.
Navigation is the problem. So if we have youths, especially those living close to this forest, recruited into the forest guard, right? And those youths will be able to help the soldiers to, apprehend these people. Secondly, those youths, if our forests are reclaimed back, right, it means that our farmers will have access to their farmlands. That means that food insecurity will be tackled, because as we are talking about right now, most farmers, if you go to our rural areas, most farmers are afraid of going to the farms. This is why the alarm on insecurity, on food security, is growing day by day. Right. So if we can have these boys, to help collect back these forests, our farmers would farm. Then another thing, the Northern Christian Youth Professional is proposing to the president that we are suggesting that 185,000 youths should be recruited all over Nigeria. And how did we come by that number? The Vice President, Senator Kashim Ibrahim Shettima, when he was governor of Borno State, did a fantastic thing. And I'd like to appreciate the Vice President very much for this. I don't think he has actually been given so much credit for this. If you go back to 2012, when Boko Haram was hitting so much that President Goodluck Jonathan declared a state of emergency in 2012. Do you remember that? Very well. At that time, Boko Haram had encroached into the city of Maiduguri, encroached even into MMT. MMT is the local government that houses the government house of Borno State. At that time, bombs were going up in the market, Monday market. If you remember, bombs were going up almost on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. At the ATMs, bombs were going up. In offices, bombs were going off. They were encroaching. Our Vice President, then Governor of Borno State, did something very wonderful. He recruited, he facilitated in collaboration with the Office of the NSA, National Security Advisor, and they established the Joint Civilian Task Force, which collected 20,000 boys, right, from the streets from Maiduguri, from Borno State, and recruited them into this.
Isaac, I'm afraid.
Let me quickly put these points together.
By all means, in 30 seconds.
Yes, in 30 seconds. So 20,000 people were recruited, and they were able to smoke out Boko Haram.
You have said the president should adopt that model.
Yes, he should adopt that model. And he has the capacity to do it because he has done it in Lagos with the creation of LASMA, Laoma Green Initiative. His vice president has done it in Borno State with the creation of the civilian JTF.
Now, Isaac, I must confess, you're leaving me no option than to drag you here next week again.
Please drag me. I like to talk about these issues.
Nigerians are very interested in this issue. I've been talking with Isaac Abrak, he's chairman, Northern Christian Youth Professionals. He's been a hostile environment journalist, an award-winning one at that, and he's also a public affairs commentator. Isaac, I thank you so very much for deciding to invest some of your time with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much, Uyi, for having me. Mr. President, we want the establishment of the Forest Guard, 185,000 youths, to be done within the first 6 months of this administration. We are aware that you already have the experience in Lagos, and so we expect this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. Even though the president is away in Paris, France now attending the Financial Pact Summit, we do understand that he has a heart with regards to these issues. Thank you again, Isaac, for coming. We appreciate it. Do have a great day.
Thank you very much.
This is what we're leaving it on the program, everyone. We do appreciate you for being a part of it. I am Muyi Agbofuegbe. News Highlights is up next.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The
legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
The National Assembly is something that must be gotten right. Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle, the ASU strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.